Doing well. How are you?
It's been a long day. Although you guys could like second that, third that. Okay. So first of all, how are you doing? All right. Not too scary faces there. All right. So thank you for showing up. I realize that I may have messed up on dates a little bit because it doesn't indicate on the syllabus that we do have class tonight, but I was planning on it, so I'm happy to see you here. I didn't say we didn't have it, so Adam's the only one I told officially that yes, we had class tonight, so I appreciate it. First of all, I want to give you just a small overview for the end of the semester. The preliminary exam is due at the end of the semester, okay, which is the 15th of December. The last week of class from the 10th to the 15th, officially, you have that time to take the test. However, really, you have until you come back to school in January, okay? So we are going to send out on Sunday the papers that you have to read and open up this place in the Blackboard shell for you to submit your answers. You are going to have as much time as you need to read the papers. I suggest annotate them, write summary statements, go through and comment, annotate them, summarize pieces of it, find themes across the papers, look at them in any way you think you can from all the theoretical lenses you've looked at this semester and last semester and since you started the program. Do all of that. Pick a 3-hour window. I don't care if it is from 2 a.m. until 5 a.m. on New Year's Eve. Okay? Pick a time, sit down, log in, write as soon as you're ready. You have until we come back in the spring for you to finish this prelim exam. Officially, you have finals week to do this. So it is built into the class. We're not asking you to do anything outside of class, but we're giving you an extended time in case you want that extra time. Okay? With that being said, that means that I would like your paper like next week. I can take your paper up to probably 15th is when class officially ends. So that would be a real good kind of drop dead date for you. If that's still going to be a stretch, I can probably even wiggle it on Saturday because the 16th, 15th, 16th, because I'm going to be driving that day. So I doubt that I'm going to be reading papers, although I might have them read to me while I'm driving just to get a general overview of them. Okay? So truly, if you need that extra time, let me know and take the extra time to finish your paper. I'm not going to mark you late for that final week of class for that. So you have really until the 15th to finish your paper, 16th if you absolutely need it. If you turn it into me later, you'll get your feedback sometime over Christmas. Sometime over Christmas. Otherwise, I will grade the paper. I'll read through it, grade the paper, whatever, and I'll get your grade submitted for the course on time so you're not getting an incomplete. But I won't have time to give you feedback on your paper and get those all back to everybody before the end of the semester, when grades have to be in on the 19th at 8 a.m. or noon or whenever it is. Okay? So there's the deal. So you can have an extra week to write if you need it. If you don't need it, that's fine. Your exam starts the week of the 10th, but it does not have to be finished the week of the 10th. It'll be finished before you come back in January. The IRB that you are doing is another piece of your project for me, is just take a stab at it. I am not looking for something perfect. I am looking for you to just kind of go through and say, all right, so this is what she has written here. This is what I'm going to put in here. This is sort of kind of where I think it goes. That way, whenever you get to your dissertation and you start to put together your IRB, you'll have seen it. And I'll go over it tonight, and I'll go over it again as well whenever you send it to me and tell you some kind of where pieces have to go. But that way you have that IRB. Some of you already turned it in already, I know. With your final papers, I've been talking to a lot of people. I would suggest you don't panic with the final paper. I really want good papers out of you all. I am not looking for perfect papers. This is a prototype of your research that you'll do with your IIP and with your dissertation. I know that when you start the whole process of this, that your lit review you start with and what you end up needing at the end are probably not going to be smooth as silk and, you know, all your transitions blended beautifully. Not going to happen, because as a lot of you have found already, when you got to that end piece, you're like, oh, this is nowhere in my lit review and I need to talk about it. So what you're going to do then is you're going to take the little piece that you found at the end that, you know, you don't have anything on your lit review to kind of match up with it in the discussion and talk about, and you're going to go find 2 or 3 papers that talk about it in a way kind of sort of similar to what you're doing, and you're going to make a nice little chunk of that and you're going to slap it into that lit review somewhere where it seems to fit best. Okay? It's not going to be perfectly seamed. You are not going to read 70 papers or 15 papers even and say, these 3 are the premier examples of how this meshes with my work. You're going to Google search it, find 2 or 3 that align with your work, even if it's a little bit off, and you're going to put it in there so that you have at least some kind of basis for literature when you get to your discussion. Is that a hand up or is that just resting it on your head? Okay.
No question.
Okay. So you'll have your lit review, then you'll have your research questions, because it's going to go down through and it's going to say, this study needs to happen because of all this research. Research questions. Methodology. You are probably not going to be able to say, this is a phenomenology study, this is a ethnography study, or anything like that. It's most likely going to be a basic qualitative research study. Fine. It's fine with that. Some of you I've talked to already, and the way you've already been writing up your results, you'll have a case study, because that's what you've already written. So you can use case study if you have these pieces that are bounded and that kind of express what you're doing. And I'm okay with you going with a case study. It fits with almost any other kind as well. But for the most part, you didn't have time to do the in-depth nature of really a lot of the other types. And we didn't have time to really do grounded theory and revisit it multiple times and, you know, build it from the bottom up. So basic qualitative study, you can cite Merriam, that's fine. That means you're doing an exploratory study that's looking at things with a qualitative or an interpretive lens, and that works. So you'll give me the design of your experiment, what you did first, what you did second, what you did third, the type of interview that you did, your number of participants, some demographics about them if you have them, the setting that they were from or where you pulled your resources. You're going to talk about your analysis. You know, when you have, or I'm sorry, your interview questions and that, you can put those into the appendix and reference them, see appendix, whatever, or you can put several of the questions in if it makes sense to organize your data by research question, you can do that as well. Then you'll do your analysis. You're going to talk about your coding. If it's from theory, then you talk about that. If it's a priori coding, straight out of theory. If it happened to be a little bit of a priori based on, you know, different topics or design principles that you found or other research, then you can link it to that. You know, this framework was pulled from design principles from Kaufman et al. 2015. Okay. Where they say that this, and this, therefore in this data, I was looking for these topics. Or from a theoretical framework, I was looking for these pieces. Emerging codes were added as needed. You can list those or you can talk about those. You can use a data table for some of that if you want, or you can list them all out paragraph form. I don't care. I do, in the examples I gave you, I think I have mine in charts, but that doesn't say yours have to be. Then you're going to put in analysis. This is how I did it. I coded the interviews first, then I used that data to help, you know, develop extra emerging codes that I used on my reflections. And then I looked at the course syllabi that I pulled using the same lens. Talk a little bit about that. then you'll have your findings. I suggest that you look at your findings by theme. The theme is kind of like the general pattern to your codes. Okay, so if I have a code that talks about, I made it looking at a project that I was using, if I made it 3-dimensional, I made sure that the colors looked good together. The pieces move because I used flexible plastic to hook them together. I made a stand so that it'll stand up and be 3-dimensional. I made sure that it was balanced with the same number of arms and legs on every side, whatever. Those might be bundled as design elements or design considerations. So when the students were building their bugs for me, they had these design considerations that they were looking at. So the codes that I used might have been 2-dimensional, 3-dimensional, 2-dimensional or 3-dimensional. It might have been, what else do we use? Articulated joints. It might have been color choice. All these things that we coded based on that, we kind of clumped them all together to make it design considerations. So when I'm talking about the themes then for my project, I can say that the creativity of the students was expressed in design considerations. These design considerations contain this, 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 and this. Why do I summarize it like that? Because people don't really care most of the time about the codes that you use. Once you show them how you got them and how you got the information, they want to look at the broader overarching patterns, the big ticket ideas. If you had to tell me 2 main things from your project tonight, these 2 main ideas that you're giving me, those are probably going to be your themes. Those are your main findings that you're talking about. When you get to the findings, you can categorize it by those and then talk about how you got there. Design considerations were really important for the students. And then I can talk about the fact that they spent a lot of time discussing color choice. They spent a lot of time discussing how to make it 3-dimensional. They showed each other how to make this 3-dimensional. They spent a lot of time experimenting with the pens to get this right. I could talk about that, and that they felt that they were really creative whenever they were able to make it something that would stand up on its own. And I would put that in as an excerpt. They did this all, we observed all of this, and then I would say, Sammy said, using the pen makes it more creative because you have to keep going. There's not a way to erase your mistake. Or I could, in addition, Dante added, yeah, I really like the fact that you have to think of ways to use all the color of the plastic. You can't just cut it off and start it over again like you can with a marker, or stop it and start it again like you can with a marker. You have to think up ways in order that you can use it before you waste it all. All right, so I put those excerpts in there, and then I would summarize it, and then move on to the next one. Findings is what they said, what they did, the data that you have. Discussion takes the theory you start with in your lit review, the studies you start with in your lit review, your woohoo moment, and then your spin on it. So the discussion is both easy and hard to write, because you know what you want to say. This is your place to pull up to the pulpit and say, this is good, because why? But it's really hard because you're not sure you have the cred to say that. You're not sure you made the right conclusions. It feels really wishy-washy because there's not a 0.05 to say yes or no to. You're drawing all these conclusions and finding these patterns kind of on your own, and it's a little bit scary sometimes. But all these things stack up. In your discussion, you're going to say things like, although Smith in 2017 found that design elements were actually not an indicator of creativity, in my study they were. The students spent a lot of time and intellectual capital discussing this creativity from the standpoint of how they built their bug. Considering students' creativity in terms of design considerations that they can manage or manipulate is really important, because this is one place that they're given autonomy in their classroom. Most of the other assignments are based on what the teacher wants to have. This is something that they actually design themselves. Therefore, we feel that this piece is really reflecting their creativity in ways that a rubric would not. Okay, I'm making all of this up, by the way. But that's how I would say, somebody said this, I say this different. Do not say, so-and-so's wrong. What you want to say is, so-and-so said this, my study showed that. So-and-so said this, my study aligns with this. So-and-so said this in the context of adult learners. With youth, I found this as well. With youth, I found a different pattern. So you want to take the literature that's there, you add what you found, and then you build on it. And that's where you actually do your contributing to knowledge base. And that's where you do this little bit of work. You know, if this is the surface of knowledge as a whole, you know, your study is going to go right there. See that little teeny tiny bit you're bumping up above it? That's what you're going to have. Even if you found something woohoo great, it's still going to only be a little bump above the surface of all the literature that's been out there. But that's where you get to add your contribution. Does that make sense? Okay, then conclusions, you can say, you know, this was great, I did great things. Future study, I want to do this, 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 and this. Okay, but that's kind of how the whole paper comes together and what you should be working towards trying to have finished up for next week at some point in time. Questions on that? Okay. The other piece I wanted to talk to you about is the IRB. Because I have an IRB dropped. Hold on, it's not bringing me up the right document. I have an IRB dropped in there. Most of your IRB studies will either be not human subject review, NHSR, or they will be exempt, most of them. And not human subjects review means that it's not reviewable research. It doesn't fit the criteria that the federal government says this is research and it has to have the, you know, our eyes across all pieces of it. So with that, this is what the determination of the project needs review. It's called NSHR. Most of you will fill this out first, and then we will go back and fill out the other ones if they kick it to you. I gave you an exempt form in the class, and I'll go through that in 1 second. With this, where it says principal investigator right here, this is not you. It has to be your advisor, okay? And sometimes people have put me in when their advisor wasn't around, but this has to be your advisor because they're faculty. As a student, you're not allowed to put in an IRB. You can go in as a co-investigator in graduate student for your status, or you can be listed down here as a researcher. Is this project to develop or contribute to generalizable knowledge? Well, of course you want to say yes. You're going to say no, most likely, because these are limited studies. They are bounded. And even if they are really great studies that I feel contribute to generalizable knowledge, if they're really small and they are not intended necessarily to look at things that are outside of the system, then we can usually say that they're not generalizable. My stuff, whenever I submit it, because of the way I word things and the way that I do my analysis, it often, Bob will come back and he'll say, yeah, it is, kick it to exempt. But like Catherine and Ray and Ming and Troy, they all have a lot of luck getting it through as not generalizable because they're doing qualitative data that is really small scale. And I don't know what wording that they use, but you'll have better luck with going through probably than with me, because I don't know what I say, but Bob usually makes me put it in again as an exempt. Human beings, most of you for this class, data through intervention or interaction will be yes, and then identifiable private is probably going to also be yes. If you interview someone, that's giving you information there. However, if it's programmatic review, which some of you are doing, you're looking at the program within your institution, you're looking at, for example, Dan, you're looking at students' use of computers in your class. Corinne, you're looking at student or teacher PD within your school system. Michelle, you're looking at CPR class, like improvement on CPR class, so you're probably going to be able to say that. Ryan, you could probably pull that too. Adam, I don't know, you may be out of luck. You're probably gonna have to go exempt, really. But you'll be able to, objective, aim, or purpose will be basically the purpose for your study. So you're going to be examining a CPR class to look at instructor influence on student personalization or something like that. Background and significance, you'll put in about 2 to 3 paragraphs of your lit review and how you feel that this is important. So it's basically the purpose for the project and a little bit of lit review. Methods, you'll lay out what you're doing for your data collection and for your analysis. Expected outcome or result. It can be anything from better understanding of student use of mobile computers in a computer science class to learning occurring whenever you're annotating online, anything like that. Involvement of living persons, this will be if you're interviewing someone, if you're looking at their data, if you're looking at their classwork, any of those kind of things go into here. You're going to list what you have them do, if you're talking to them, if you're taking data from their classes or anything like that. Ethical aspects of the project. This looks at, are they being coerced into it? Are you offering them $100 to do a 5-minute survey? You know, that would be really silly to do. None of you have the money to do that, I'm assuming, but that would be coercing them. You know, is this in your class and they are getting 50 bonus points out of a, 100-point class? You know, are you making them basically an offer that they can't refuse? Could this implicate them in something that is going to hurt them professionally? So if they're talking about the horrible things their principal is doing whenever they're observing them, like how their principal's sitting there and like reading the newspaper or something like that, that could have an impact on their job, then you need to list this in here and you need to try and mitigate the risk for those people. So that's why if you're videotaping them, you're probably going to have it using pseudonyms. You will encrypt it and store it in a locked cabinet, in a locked room. Those are the kind of things that you're going to be using to anonymize your data as much as possible, even though there's a possibility that their face could be linked back to the words that they're saying. If you have video for it, this is where you would lay out how you're going to try and mitigate that risk for them. And then attachments would be if you're using any kind of review, reflection, or review question that they're going to be talking about, data that you're pulling from a website, any of those kind of things. The other one, the exempt one, is about the same. It is a little bit longer. I have an example of it in there though, but I wanted to show you what a NSHR looks like, because when you actually do your IRB review, you'll start with that one whenever you get to your dissertation project. The exempt is a little bit longer. If it doesn't quite fit your study, shoot me an email and we can talk through where you would put the checks in for it, because there's a few more questions that I'm looking for my exempt example. Okay. We'll use this one. All right, so with this one, this was our first one, deterring for students from cheating. This one was never, ever, ever going to make it through IRB. So this is why Tammy ended up changing her topic, because think about it. If the students admit to cheating and the teacher didn't catch them, both of them could be liable for some punishment coming down through the university. And therefore, there's no way that they were ever going to say we could do this study. Even though it was really cool, and we were kind of hoping to catch kids that were cheating, but then we had to think about it. If you have people signing up and saying, yes, you can use my video from that class, and I know I cheated in it, I am never going to give you permission to use my video. So even though it was anonymized, it was prior collected, it was nothing that we had access to, grades were already submitted, they weren't going to let us do it, number one, because the ethical implications for the students' careers as well as the faculty who didn't catch them cheating's careers. And I mean, seriously, no student is ever going to let you look at their data if they were cheating and didn't get caught. You know, they were getting away from it. Exemption looks like this. They have a lot of checkboxes that are not in the other. If it's a regular ed kind of setting, you get to pick category 1. If you're doing survey work, it goes under category 2 99% of the time. Or else number 3. Number 4, this is de-identified data, which some of you have access to. So for example, Ryan, if you're pulling for your study information from a course that has all the names removed from it already, and you're able to download it that way, you're able to use it as de-identified data, and then you don't have to go through a lot of the review. And then we don't do like food testing here. So this one's spread out a little bit more. Background and significance are separated, but it's still basically we're looking for dishonesty, and then we're looking for a little bit of information, research question, purpose of the study. Methods, we put in potential interview questions, but you don't have to. A lot of times they will ask you for your interview questions or your survey to be attached if you don't put it on there the first place. So a lot of times I'll put them at the very bottom with additional documents, and then we attach them. This one asks about how you're going to recruit them. And then here are the risks. We didn't think about the cheating, so obviously when it got kicked back to us, we were really, kind of flummoxed on why they wouldn't let it at first. But then when Bob talked to me and explained it, I was like, oh yeah, I see that now. But this is, and I do have a copy of one in there that you can kind of look at the risks and kind of copy paste and then fix to kind of fit your situation a little bit more. That's, pseudonyms and how you're going to ask your questions in a way that's not going to link back to their career, and what you're not going to talk about in case it's going to be something that's controversial. When you do the exempt form, they ask about benefits. Learning more about themselves or learning more about a subject, learning study habits, those are always potential benefits that go along with anything else. So don't just say none, because then they'll be like, well, then why should they get to do that, or why should they have to do it? Then ethical aspects. This is kind of a little bit boilerplate language. The other piece of it is, I have it listed in mine about making sure that they're protected and not having the study linking back to them. Not funded with anything, and then that's about the end of it there. So those are the 2 forms of IRB that you're going to probably have to look at the most whenever you're working on these. As you're filling them out, you're going to just take a stab at it this time. I will add comments and get it back to you. And then when you do it for real, your advisor will work with you on it. And if you have any questions, you can always come back to me. I've had really good luck with programmatic review and with using video research. I have some wording and some references that I use with the video research because I went round and round and round with Bob, who's the director of IRB, when I first came, about how I use video research and how I use it with youth, because I work with K-12 students a lot with it. So I do have kind of a set of language that I use with it that seems to have enough detail. If it's what you're doing, it has enough information in it, and it has the references that seems to go through IRB, and they understand it. They've seen it before from me, so I'm willing to give that to you so you can use it if you need to. All right, I'm done talking now. What kind of questions do you guys have? I talked to most of you recently, so if you don't have anything, it's okay, but do you have any other questions?
Do we need to do a presentation at the end? Is that something that comes when we submit the paper?
I would like you in class to talk a little bit about your project, to share out with each other what's going to go on. I will say that I was thrown off because I do have it in the syllabus scheduled for next week, but Becky had emailed me and said, here's my presentation for class. And I jumped to the conclusion that it was supposed to be tonight versus tomorrow and next week. But she's in China for 2 weeks, so that's why she sent it to me early. So that was my bad, because I told Corinne that she had to be ready to talk tonight. So I'm willing to do that if you guys would like to talk a little bit about your project and what you found so far, your woohoo moment, the biggest struggle that you've had. If you would like to talk a little bit about that, and then you won't have to speak next week. You can kind of just listen and ask questions with other people. If you're not ready to do that, that is fine. All right, so we'll wait till next week.
So just to follow up, I thought I had seen in the shell that there were examples of other like PowerPoints that had narration. We're not doing that, right? Are we doing that?
If you would like to do it as a PowerPoint and do narration, that was what they did last time, because what happened was the last week of class in the summer, out of a class of 11, there were going to be 2 people at class. So I said, make me a video, post it. We're going to talk about it afterward, because we didn't have that. If you guys would like to do that, make a video. I don't know if oh, that's in the discussion. That's where I missed it. I didn't see where that was. I would have pulled it down. If you guys would rather make videos and talk about them then and share them out, we can do it that way. If you want to talk about it with your cohort and that, then I'm fine with it as well. What would you guys rather do? I'll let you 5 vote on it. Do you want to talk in person, or do you want to make a video? Go ahead.
I'd prefer no video and just have it, like, just talk about it. That's just me.
Agreed.
Okay. That way you don't have to make it.
To just talk about it next week. Hopefully we'll go as long as we need, right? Are we limited to 5-10 minutes? Is that how?
Oh, I'd like to limit you to 5 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, then we'll all be able. I'm having all students do present. I know the gist of it. So.
Yeah, if anybody wants to talk tonight, that's fine. If you're not ready to, if you're not quite to that point, that's fine too. But if you want to talk now and get it out of the way, I'll post the video from this and everybody can see it that way. But next week, I was planning kind of on like 5 minutes. This is what I did. This is my big woohoo moments. This is the biggest thing I struggled with. This is where I think I might go in the future with it. That kind of thing. It does not give you much time to talk at all. And I'll run my buzzer, because otherwise we'll be here until like midnight. Because once you get started, everybody can talk about their project. Okay, so where are you guys at? Like kind of done-wise?
Question also about the deliverables. I know that in the shell you have the weeks broken down, and then you have all the individual submission links. So I know I need a few more of those to be submitted, but is that all due at the same time? I mean, I know some of them probably need to have already been submitted, but I'm just
yeah. I'm more of a mastery learner person. So if you missed a few things, bits and pieces here and there, and you see where you missed them and you get them turned into me by the end of the class, I'm good with it. It doesn't help you as much. For those of you that have everything in, then that's all great. If you're missing, 2 weeks of reflections and field notes in that, look back at what you did those weeks, try and think of what you were doing then, explain kind of your work that you did, what you were thinking about it, kind of try and capture The problem with doing your field notes at the end is you're thinking back and retrospectively considering what you had, and you don't kind of capture your kind of in situ moments of, this is what I think it is, and then be like, oh, wait, next person I interviewed totally flip-flopped. Now I don't know what I'm looking at. You capture those things if you're taking notes every week. But I mean, if you forgot one or you forgot to turn it in, that's fine. Just turn them in. I'm fine with that. And like I said, we're looking at a prototype paper. We are not looking at a perfect paper. With that being said, though, I do expect that your lit review is going to be more than a page long. It should be, 2 pages, 3 pages, have some substance to it so you have something to talk with at the end. 4 pages is fine. So, but you need to have some literature in there to talk about with the studies that have been done, with your theory that is there. Whenever you get to the end with your woohoo moments that you want to talk about, your 2 or 3 points, you need to have something in the beginning that you can tie it to. So that's where you need to have that piece in. So go ahead.
I have a question. There's an assignment overview of final paper. Is that just turning in the final paper, or did you want us to write a summary on it? Okay.
Nope, that's turning in. I think that's turning in the final paper. I will look at the name I put on it. I was probably trying to make it like, I don't know, encompass the whole thing is what I think it was, but I think that's just the final paper submission. It's like 300 points, right? Or something like that. 350, that's it. That's the final paper. Whole big shebang with all the appendices and everything. With your appendices, if everything's in Google Doc, give me hot links. I'm fine with that. You don't have to try and fit it and format it and copy paste and like fight with the formatting to get it all in there. If you have pictures of things, PDFs that are downloaded, load them into Google Doc and link them with that. It's a whole lot easier than trying to make it all one Word document that meshes. I'm fine with that. So are you guys in the putting it together stage? Are you in the writing piece of it? Are you still working on analysis?
I'm putting it all together into, I think we talked yesterday, but I'm putting it all together. And when I was writing my analysis, I came across some things. I was the one who was like, it's not in my lit review. So that's kind of where, so I found 2 articles that I'm able to kind of pull in just a paragraph. So I'm going to add a paragraph to my lit review so that then I can use those to substantiate my analysis at the end. So that's where I am.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you are not the only one that found that, but you're the one that was most recent. Okay, Adam, you're working on your findings. Okay, awesome. From when we talked the last time, that's good progress.
Yeah, just going through and I kind of had the opposite where I talked about something in lit review that nobody really talked about in the interviews. So I might have to connect it or take that out of the lit review, I guess.
You can leave it in there. It can just be something.
Or just say that I didn't find data on it.
Right, right. Because not finding something is actually a finding. Whenever you get into your, like if you're doing quantitative work, which I know some of you have more of a quantitative mindset, when you're doing quantitative work, something that is not significant is a finding. The same thing happens here. Thinking you're going to find this really big theoretical idea that everybody else has found, and then it comes up empty, that's important.
Mm-hmm.
I remember go ahead.
I was just, it's a little kind of trying to do the findings are like more like what you found, but the discussion is like contrasting that with the lit review, basically.
Yeah, so your analysis and your findings is how you went through the data, and then the findings are how you, like your big woohoo moments, the patterns that you see across your data. Okay, sometimes they could be a code. One code could be a finding, but a lot of times it'll be like a couple pieces clumped together that you kind of think about and you're like, ooh, that really stands for this.
So kind of putting the findings together with the previous parts.
You take your codes and you kind of look for patterns, and that becomes your finding. The pattern, like if I said to you, what are the 2 main things you found in your project? those are probably your findings.
Okay.
The
Yeah, that's
discussion-
what I was.
Yeah, the discussion, you'll take your finding and you'll say, previous literature on annotation talks about this. In my study, I found that people also use this in the same way.
Okay, so you're still, it's like a kind of an enhanced section of the findings. So you're still taking the findings and discussing that.
Yeah,
That makes sense.
yeah, so you're taking, like, this is what people say, this is what I found, here's what I think about it. And that's where you put your spin on it. Why is this important? Why does this matter? Does this matter at all?
Okay.
This is what I think about this. This is how my work talks with the other stuff. This is where you have the little conversation with the literature that you've used in your lit review.
Okay.
Okay. How about you, Ryan? You're about ticking down to the end, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm getting there. I'm finishing up the finding section. I found things ended up being very, very split. Had 5 times as many motivational factors as I had hygiene factors, but all of the motivation factors seemed to happen in the discussion boards, and all the hygiene factors and all the displeasure was in the interviews. So it's a lot of now going back and contrasting those.
Well, that gives you plenty of space for future work.
Yeah. Yeah, very, very interesting stuff. I mean, there's good findings. It's just, there's a lot more data there than I thought was going to be there.
I think everybody came out of it going, wow. And yeah, I know Corinne and I talked about the fact that, like, you know, I kept saying, all right, maybe narrow it a little bit more, narrow it, and it didn't seem like you were really collecting that much necessarily. But then you're like, oh, I've got a pile of stuff. Yeah. So, okay. But you're making sense of it, even though there's 2 contrasting pieces in that. You can use what you talked about with the fact that, you know, the midterm and all the people were displeased with that. You can add that in as a conversation, either from your interview, data from your interview if the students happen to mention it, or if you talk to the professor and he told you that, you can put it in there as like a quotation from a conversation. You know, there's an APA format for using that.
Okay.
If you want that to kind of substantiate why if you think that's really one of the reasons why, and you think that that has a really big effect on it, and you want to be able to use that, then just kind of drop it in there like that.
Well, I have a couple pretty interesting findings from it. One of the main ones is that I looked at students' engagement and how much they were sharing personal, like, stories and personal testimonies. And it actually, while there were significantly fewer initial posts compared to the comments below them, most of the personal engagement came off the initial post, not sharing with people, which lined up with all the interviews said that it was, all the responses were just nicey, superficial sharing, not anything of substance. So the data on those 2 actually meshed quite well.
Nice. Okay. How are you feeling, Michelle?
Yeah, pretty good. I'm just in my, finding stage, so working through it.
Catching up.
Yeah, trying.
Okay. How about you, Dan? I think you're muted. Now I unmuted you, maybe.
I'm sorry. I'm about the same as Michelle. You know, working towards the end of doing my analysis, and then I've got several irons in the fire trying to get it, it all put together, essentially. So I'll have more next week. So for now, I'm trying my best to get it pulled together. So
Okay, good. Keep going.
mhm.
And like I said, next week, on Monday next week, all you have to do is have a couple ideas on what you think you found. If you're still writing next week, then kind of tentative findings is going to be fine. You know, because by the time you talk about what you did, how you analyzed it, what you think you found, that's going to be close to your 5 minutes. So unless you really want to talk fast or you really want to focus on just what you found at the end. So, you know, even if you're still in the process of finishing up and writing your discussion, that you should still be able to roll out your like 2 big woohoo moments. Okay. And Adam, if you're going to be on the bus and you want to record it and send it to me ahead of time, that's fine.
Yeah, I might do that. If it's going to be at 4, I might just record it ahead of time.
Yeah. Okay. Does anybody else have other questions for me? Anything else you want to talk about? Anything else that you're struggling with? You want to know more about? Anything like that?
I do have a question about the exam. So the Blackboard shell for your class will stay open until like January?
Yeah, it's open for like 2 years. You can come back. You can come back into any of your old classes for like 2 years.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, before they erase them from it. So it'll still be open, or else we will have a separate section that gets you guys enrolled in it that'll appear in your shell, and it'll say like prelim exam or milestones or something like that. I'm not sure how we handled that the last time. If we put it into my class, reset them. Bye, Adam. Or if we set it up with a different shell. I can't remember, but you'll have it in Blackboard for you. It'll be ready to go.
Okay.
And we'll get the papers sent out to you. I think they'll be sent out Sunday. And then, like I said, you can read them, work with them. You'll have all the time you want. Then you pick a 3-hour block of time to do the exam at your convenience over Christmas. Yay, homework on Christmas. So. Anything else for the good of the order? Anything else you need to know, want to know? Okay. That's good. That's beautiful. All right, then. I will hold on if anybody needs to talk to me. Otherwise, you guys have a really great night. I appreciate you showing up for class.
Have a great evening, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.
Everybody.
Thanks. Bye.